Ever wondered what separates good cricketers from the best in the world? I recently sat down with former Blackcaps coach Gary Stead. He coached New Zealand through a golden era, including a World Test Championship win and 2 World Cup finals.
We obviously had a World Test Championship win, which was incredible to be part of. And we went to a T20 and an ODI World Cup final. Obviously, the 2019 one in England. That's still not really sure how I feel about it still.
Elite players prepare differently and have an incredible self-awareness that drives their success.
Kane is a perfectionist when he bats, but he also knows that he has holes in his game, and it's about how do you hide those holes so people can't find them.
What the top pros focus on is preparing for the specific requirements of their role in the team.
Is it a technical net? Is it a tactical net? Is it a game sort of scenario? And I think often the mistake that people make is
Knowing your game inside out at the highest level is crucial for success.
You take a Daryl Mitchell, for example, who debuted at 29, but he was hardened. He'd had 8 or 9 years of first-class cricket. He understood his game. And so that jump from being new into first-class cricket to the test level wasn't so big for him.
Gary's coaching experience has also shown that practice isn't always beneficial.
I'm a big believer that when you're going well as a batsman, you should keep batting as much as you can. And when you're not going so well, you shouldn't spend too much time in the nets.
He also speaks about the times that have challenged him the most.
There's times I definitely haven't got it right as a coach in this space as well. So I remember I was actually probably on the verge of burnout.
Gary spoke to me during a coaching stint in India while looking after the Andhra Pradesh first-class team. He talked about the differences between coaching in a cricket-mad nation compared to being in charge of the Blackcaps.
I think your home media are always the harshest. And I think coming here to India, well, I probably wouldn't be here if New Zealand didn't beat India in the Test series as well. But they obviously, it's a little bit uncomfortable in a way here because it's sort of that hero worshipping type mentality they have and mindset. So they're looking for heroes, and so they put you up on a pedestal as well. But I guess I just try and block all that out, and it's nothing that I can control. And just try and keep the team at focus whenever you can, whatever they need. So yeah, I don't need to be a star. I'm happy in the background.
Yeah, that's my memory of you as well, Steady. When I worked with you at the junior academy, was definitely you were happy in the background, always adding value though when your time came. You mentioned the Test series win, but I vividly remember, I think it was 70 in a Test match over there that you scored.
Yeah, 78 actually at Ahmedabad. So my only Test match over here was I got called over when Craig McMillan broke a finger, and came over, and I remember talking to David Trist, who was the coach. So I arrived about 48 hours before the team because they were still finishing a Test match off. And poor old Tristy, he got me in his room and said, are you physically and mentally ready to open the innings? And I didn't say another word and walked out 10 minutes later. He just kept talking, and I was opening the batting in a few days. So yeah, but it was, yeah, it's a good memory because I mean they were Dravid, Tendulkar, Ganguly. They were a top batting team. So it was nice to watch close up, usually under the helmet.
So if we stick with your career as a player for a moment, other than that one, what are your enduring memories as a player?
Probably, I don't remember that many matches, the details of it. You probably remember a few times you personally did very well or thought you played well, but more so I think the mates that you make and the teams that you play in, they're the things that stick with you for a long time. And I know a month or so ago, I caught up with a group of the Canterbury players that I started playing with, which was good. And you sort of lose touch when you finish playing, and so to catch up with nights like that, sort of you reminisce a wee bit and brings back sort of memories and things you forget about as you get a bit older. But look, I mean, as a player, I never saw myself as being a really gifted player or anything like that. I had to work hard for what I had, and I'm proud of, I guess, what I achieved as a player as well. I would have loved to have played for New Zealand more, but wasn't to be. But I guess I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I did get to play 5 Test matches as well.
You touched on that. Playing more for New Zealand, and I guess did that feeling of desire or wanting to contribute to the country, did that feed into your coaching ambitions, do you think?
I never really set out with any ambitions in the coaching side of it. I mean, I was lucky when I was 18. I think I got the scholarship to Lords and went over there and came back and got offered a job at Canterbury Cricket. So I started in primary schools, basically going around and doing the old learning to play cricket, and then you do a couple of rep teams. And so I always loved the idea of talking about the game, how do we improve, and I think it became reasonably natural to me. I loved captaining as well, because you're always thinking about the game and you're always in the game. So I think that helped me, I guess, with that grounding in coaching as well. But I think what we think about as a coach, certainly where I am now in India, and they want to be told what to do, and that's not what I believe coaching's about. It's trying to find or get the players to find the best answers for them and to become self-sufficient. And that for me is probably the most important thing that I've learned as I've continued to coach, is what you say may not stand with them, but if they can work it out themselves, then it's got much more chance of sticking for longer. And so you've got to guide them to those places of reflection and working out what is their game and how do they want to play and what's the philosophy that they want to stand by when they play, so they can walk off at the end of the game. Because, I mean, let's face it, our game is about mistakes. We make mistakes, we make errors, and it can be fatal as a batsman. That's what the game is. So I think it's very easy to get focused on the things that don't go well, instead of being, what do you do well, and what is your strengths, and what are the things you want to commit to.
I love that. And so that sort of coaching philosophy, as it developed for you as you've gone throughout your coaching journey, have you learned things as a coach that you reflect on your time as a player and you think, maybe these 1 or 2 things would have really assisted me in my playing days? And the reason I'm asking is because my audience generally studies sort of that sort of 16 to 30-year-old age bracket.
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I think as a coach, the way I've developed is probably looking at all the coaches that I've had in the past and players I've seen, and you try and pull out the bits that you like the most, and probably remember conversations with coaches and what they were asking me and what they were trying to get me to do. And I think as a player, that's what you have to work out, is what works for you, because it could be the best coach in the world that gives you some advice, but it just doesn't work for you. And that's, I think, we're not all graced with the Joe Root, the Kane Williamson techniques, and so you have to work it out. And even like working with Kane for 7 years or so, Kane is a perfectionist when he bats, but he also knows that he has holes in his game, and it's about how do you hide those holes so people can't find them. And I think when you can recognize that, it always gives you something you can go and then work on as well. There's a little area of my game I can continue to strive to just be 1% better. And obviously, the higher up you go, the smaller gains that can be made. I think when you are developing as a cricketer, you can make big gains quickly with really clear a really clear idea of what you're trying to work on, but also making sure that every training session you have has purpose, has a reason for what you are trying to achieve there as well. And so, for example, is it a technical net? Is it a tactical net? Is it a game sort of scenario? And I think often the mistake that people make is they always want to go into the nets and not make mistakes, whereas I sort of view it that the nets are an opportunity to grow your game. So if it's about a tactical type of scenario, well, we will need you to hit the ball in this area. I don't care how many mistakes you make. You've got to find a way of doing it. And then you work out, well, does this fit into my game plan? And you see players that can improve so quickly when they take their focus away from what their hands are doing or their feet are doing into how they're playing the game. And I think that's where we make mistakes at times as coaches, as we think it's all about technique. And don't get me wrong, cricket is a technique game. It has that element to it. But at some stage, your technique is your technique. You're not going to change it enormously. So it's working out what you can do in different scenarios and how you have to adapt to become the best version of you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You've actually probably covered off a couple of my questions there, so nicely done.
Sorry.
No, it's perfect. I guess I wanted to just jump back one more time to your playing days. Just that last question kind of alluded to it as well, but look, I'll never forget the one day 100 I saw you score at the Outer Oval. I think you were 97-ish going into the final over, needing 4 runs to win. You were on strike. You didn't score off the first 5 balls. And as you know, for the listeners out there, tension was growing. And I was thinking, geez, he's leaving this tight, right? But it just showed like the final ball of the game, you hit a boundary to win and bring up your 100. For me, you know, reflecting on that innings and the moments after was like, you know, the composure you showed under pressure. I guess what I wanted to ask was, you know, what were you going through emotionally in that over? Because I think there's a lot that can be learned from that.
Yeah, I remember that innings. More so, I think, because Auckland had a full strength team out, and so did we. And I remember it was a televised game, and my mentality, because I hadn't broken into the New Zealand team or anything there, is here's an opportunity to mix it with the big boys as well. And I think we were in a little bit of trouble at the time, and I was probably batting 5 or 6. I can't remember now, but yeah, I think it was the second to last ball, actually, from memory. Andre Adams was bowling. We were 9 down as well, so we couldn't afford to lose a wicket. So you always want to get the job done, and you want to. Often, I think a mistake people make is they don't respect the number of balls you had. So I had 6 balls basically to find 2 more runs to win the game. And from memory, Andre bowled 3 or 4 ball cracking Yorkers. And I just thought, well, he can't keep doing it. He's going to miss at some stage. And I guess in the back of my mind was, well, if we scramble 1 run off the last ball, then we're not losing it. But we're 9 down. We can't afford to, I guess, make a mistake earlier in the over or me to do something reckless. So you play all those things out in your mind and hope that you've had enough, I guess, experiences or scenarios that you have that calmness under pressure as well. And at the end of the day, it's me versus the ball. It doesn't really matter what anything else, or whatever else is happening. It was me versus the ball, and I knew that if I got the right ball, that I was still good enough. I was obviously in on 100 and or close to it. So the 100 wasn't really an issue for me at all. That wasn't what I was about. It was what we needed to do to win the game. So it was a cracking game of cricket. Like, and I guess they don't always happen that way. And you probably learn and reflect. Well, at other times I might have made mistakes in that scenario, but to get through, I guess the first emotion you have is relief as well, that, hey, we've done it. And then you sit back and probably analyze it a little bit more and reflect on what you did well and I guess what you alluded to, the calmness under pressure, was something that I think is important for all batsmen. It's easy to, as I was trying to say, you want to get to the end of the game faster at times than you need to, and that's when you start making errors, because the scoreboard ultimately is a distraction. Like I didn't need the scoreboard. I knew what I needed to do. And I think scoreboards can be distractions, fielders can be distractions, the bowler can be a distraction, but it's about blocking that out and just focusing on what you need to do at the time.
That's brilliant. I think that's key lesson for every player there for sure.
We can't keep talking about me playing though, because it's 20 years ago. My memory doesn't go back that far.
Look, for me, Steady, they were the halcyon days of New Zealand cricket, because that's where I was a kid, right? So, I mean, I actually, you might not know, so I'm actually born in Lower Hutt. So I spent my early years in Wellington. So I was at the basin. It seemed like every game of I think it was the Shell Cup back then. I used to go to every game at the basin. My dad just worked across the road at Mitsubishi car part, car company, and so I was able to nip over to the basin and watch plenty of games. So all the players around then I obviously looked up to. So them being able to work with you at the New Zealand Academy in the junior section that I was in, and I think you might have been still playing at that time and just sort of dipping your toe a little bit more into coaching. And what I do remember about that time was we had these brilliant masterclass sessions where Dale Hadley, I think, being head coach and bowling coach, Mike Shrimpton, spin bowling coach, a little bit of batting, and then at times we'd have the likes of Glenn Turner come in. Yourself, I think, was involved in my second year. I think it must have been around 2005-ish.
Maybe Ashley Ross, was he there then or not?
He wasn't. I think he dipped in and out at times for certain things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wasn't frothing and champing at the bit to chat to Ashley Ross, compared to like yourself or Glenn Turner. So look, I remember, we had some really earnest discussions, some good conversations. And one thing I vividly recall you discussing was, I guess, the frustrations as a player that ultimately, the nature of selection is that some players do get more opportunities than others. And so what I'm interested in is how, or more likely, did that have any impact on your selection philosophy as a coach? Because I think I really only paid closely attention to your time as New Zealand coach. It was probably started with Hess a little bit more so, but we started to give players more opportunities to, for guys who had maybe had some success and then gone through longer periods without seeing that success. We stuck with those players knowing that they could do it at that level, and maybe they just needed a bit more time. So was there any sort of flow-on effect from your time as a player?
I'm not sure there was a flow-on effect from my time as a player, but you're right. I think Hess and Brendan probably started that with giving guys longer rope, if you like, and I agreed with that as well. I think when you select players, you do so because you think they're the best players. So it shouldn't change over one or two innings whether they are still the best players or not. And I think sometimes the public view is, oh, let's change that, or let's get a younger player and stuff. But there's huge dangers in selecting people before they're ready as well, and it can set them backwards a long time. So I think one of the successes of the New Zealand team over the last decade has been often that when players are selected, they're a little bit older and they understand their game well. And you take a Daryl Mitchell, for example, who debuted at 29, but he was hardened. He'd had 8 or 9 years of first-class cricket. He understood his game. And so that jump from being new into first-class cricket to the test level wasn't so big for him. He'd had all the names called to him under the sun. He'd faced a lot of different bowling. And I guess I always believe, like, New Zealand's easier in a way because you select your best team. You are, and okay, especially Test cricket. White ball, you are sometimes looking for the next World Cup cycle. So whether it be 2 years or in T20 or 4 years in ODIs. So sometimes you're taking educated guesses there around what you think the team might be like at the time. But I always believe, to be fair to the players, that selecting your best players and who you think are the best players is reasonably paramount. Because if you don't do that, and it starts becoming a merry-go-round, and people start looking over their shoulder all the time, and then that develops selfishness, and that's the last thing you want in the team is selfish players. You don't want them thinking, oh, well, if I miss out now, I'm not going to be here next game. You want them to know that they have your trust and the team, and you give them a clear role of what they're doing, and you let them go through the ebbs and flows a little bit of what that might be. Now, it doesn't mean you don't leave players out from time to time. That obviously has to be done. And I think the hardest thing in being a coach and a selector is when people get to that end of their careers and that retirement age as well, and how you work with them, or sometimes you've got to make the decision for them because they won't make it, that this is your time and we're moving on now. And that can eat you up as a coach as well. And I certainly didn't enjoy those moments of coaching, but it is still part of the job that you are entrusted with trying to put what you believe is the best team out there. And so with hand on heart, I can say that I think I've always tried to do that.
Brilliant. Just in that vein, but more so when you're working individually with a player, I'm interested in how you typically handle a scenario where you can maybe see there's an opportunity to intervene with a player. Maybe that's technical, maybe that's mental. But then you start questioning, are they ready for this? So, what's the sort of process you work through at that point in time?
Yep, that's a good question. I sort of alluded a little bit earlier that my general philosophy is not to try and jump in too early, but to maybe get them to reflect differently than how they normally do, as to, is this working? Is it not? Is there a better way? Could we try something different? Because at the end of the day, it's the player's career. It's not my career. And so they have to have the, I guess, buy-in to want to change as well. And if they don't, that's fine. It's their careers. But as a coach, I guess you're trying to get the very best out of the players. I'm a big believer that when you're going well as a batsman, you should keep batting as much as you can. And when you're not going so well, you shouldn't spend too much time in the nets. And I think it's a mistake people make, because then they start searching, trying too hard. And when you do that, you get tense, your muscles get tighter, and you don't find the same freedom in your play as well. And I wish as a player, I did that a bit more myself. It was often the opposite way, that I'm in good form, I just need to hit a couple of balls, rather than honing in on those strengths. And then when it's not going so well, being able to step out and say, okay, well, rather than just grinding, and at times it gets worse, you build a bigger hole for yourself that's harder to get out of. So look, cricket, whilst it's a skill game, you need some luck at times as well. You can score hundreds and get dropped 5 times, or you could score a fantastic 10 and someone takes a screamer. And that's the game as well. So it's recognizing those things. And I guess for me, when you're talking about mental or technical intervention, I would usually start with, well, what are you feeling at the moment? What are you feeling inside yourself? Because at the top level, I think it is largely mental. You don't make they've got there because their techniques are solid enough to be able to get to that level. But I think at the top, it becomes more mental. It's the challenge against yourself, against the opposition. So it's getting very, very clear on the way you want to play, committing to that, and being so focused on and forthright, I guess, on this is the way I'm going to play. And if you do that, I think you give yourself the best chance. If you flip-flop a bit from wanting to change techniques, wanting to, I guess, try different things, that probably should be done at an earlier age. And I think it's good for secondary school type players or even a little bit older to actually experiment with doing some different things. So warm up slightly differently. Can you is it always the same way, or can you introduce something different? Can you introduce some eye exercises, some skipping, something to just get you going to be on for that first ball? Because the first 10 to 15 balls are probably your most important that you face in the innings, just to get yourself in and set. Although T20 is changing that now. But for me, it's really I think back to your original question, you see things. Sometimes I will say nothing, and you watch them come out the other side, and you think, okay, well, that was good not to step in, because I still believe that'll be stronger for them than me going and telling them what I'm thinking. Or you ask them questions like, have you considered this? What would happen if you did this? And that's, I guess, more my way, I think, of doing things now, as opposed to jumping straight in and saying you need to do this to succeed, because then the onus comes on me, not the player, and they need to own their games.
Quick one before we get back into it. If you're doing the physical, technical, tactical training, but are still not scoring the runs you believe you deserve, I've got the missing piece for you. Most batsmen think the mental game is just about being tougher. It's not. It's a trainable skill. That's why I'm involved in Headstance. It's an app built specifically for cricketers with short guided visualizations and meditations to help you stay present, handle pressure, and trust your instincts when it matters. If the mental side of the game is one of the 4 pillars that you're struggling to train, Headstance fills that void and fits nicely into your weekly routine. Train your mind like you train your batting, and let the runs take care of themselves.
So I'm interested in your expectations on batsmen that you do work with. Is your expectation that, say, if you were to provide them with some advice, it sounds like you'd be the type of coach who almost prefers the player pushing back on certain philosophies or certain things because it shows that they're owning their game.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's great if they do that. Look, most players, if you have some thoughts, that they don't turn you away. So, but I think you're looking for players to coach who are open-minded, who are willing to try things, that are willing to, I guess, experiment on the edge of their game a little bit as well, of how they can keep improving. And when you see that in players and you see that desire to get better, then it's amazing what they will try at times as well. You take a Glenn Phillips, for example, who is one of the favorite people that I have to coach. Like, he's so open-minded, yet he's very, very clear around what he's trying to achieve. And he will push back and say, this isn't working. And so we'll try a different tack. We'll do something different. But I don't know, you might not have seen it. I was watching Glenn Phillips play a T20 game 6 weeks ago now, probably in New Zealand, down in Alexandra. And he turned around and batted left-handed and hit the ball over cover for 6. He actually started left-handed, like facing up. And it's like, well, how I could never imagine myself as a player having the courage to do that for a start. But what a great attitude that he's actually, and I guess to give your listeners a bit more sort of detail around it, the day before he trained, he got a bit bored batting right-handed, so he turned around and batted left-handed in the nets as well, against the flicker and stuff like that. So he's obviously done a lot of work on it. He can throw with both arms from the boundary, but he works so hard on growing himself that it's like, it's a joy to watch, actually, like the way he trains and the way he goes about things. But it doesn't mean he won't push back if things aren't working. And I actually remember with Glenn in particular at the 2023 World Cup, because he was bowling his off spin, then he had this idea that in the next World Cup he wanted to bowl leg spin as well, and do a bit of a Liam Livingstone, being able to do both. So we actually started working on that in the 2023 World Cup, just 10 minutes a day, just working on a few things. But he binned it pretty quick when he realised it wasn't quite that easy. So But it's great that I think players like that are always thinking ahead to, well, what's my game need to look like in the future? And what do I have to do now to make that? Because if you just turn up to bat in the nets the whole time for the next day, when do you find your time? Because that's generally at test level anyway. That's about getting yourself physically and mentally ready for the next day, the competition. When do you find your time to actually grow your game further as well?
Brilliant. You made a point there around the enjoyment you get from working with players who are open-minded, right? And what came to my mind was sometimes people can be a tough nut to crack in terms of if you're a coach to the new environment, you need to build that relationship first before you're going to probably see the person for who they are, right? So I guess the nature of coaching at the level you have, most players would naturally, have the respect for you to be able to work with them. But I imagine must have been sometimes in your career where you maybe need to work on the relationship before you can get that sort of back and forth between the players. So how do you sort of navigate those scenarios?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's dangerous as a coach to go in and want to prove your knowledge, because it doesn't actually matter what your knowledge is. It's what the player wants to receive. And I've seen it before that coaches want to come in and prove a point that I know this and this is how I can make you better. But you're right. It's the relationship piece for a start, building up that trust over time. And it takes time to do that. And you hope, I think, as a coach, you get an early win. Like you might suggest something and it works for the player immediately. And I think that helps build the trust. But it can work in the other way as well. Try this and it doesn't work. And then it's not sure I want to work with that person again or that coach again. So, yeah, you've got to build up that trust, and it takes time. And I think as staff, if you have lucky enough to have other staff around you, you can bounce ideas off each other as well. And I always thought as a coach that I didn't always have the strongest relationship compared to some of the assistant coaches at times, because they get closer to them, whereas the head coach still as a selector has to sometimes make that hard call. So there were times I know I was speaking to the batting coaches around, this is what I'm seeing. Who's the best person to approach this? Is it me or is it you? And often it was them. But I knew it was still my message that was being fed, but it was just through a different lens, I suppose, as well. That drum noise isn't too loud for you, is it?
No, I can't make much of it now.
Okay, that's fine. Not sure where it's somewhere outside.
That's the nature of being where you are, right? Whole pile of stuff happening.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I wanted to tap a little bit into the mental side of the game now. So you have touched on it briefly already. If you are seeing opportunities for a player to improve their mental side of the game, whether it be developing routines, like you touched on before beautifully when you talked about identifying certain parts of the game as distractions, for example, and in identifying them naturally means that you're going to try and focus on what's more important. How do you, I guess, do you have any examples of how you've gone about that in the past or good scenarios to draw upon?
Yeah, I think the first thing you want to do is try and keep the routine of trainings in the routine of a match. So if it's about mental training, then have one bowler at a time going. Don't have them coming in twos and threes, because that's not the routine of a match. That's not the tempo. And that can be time consuming at times, that I know certainly club coaches don't have that opportunity, but I like the idea of batters batting in pairs still. So you face 6 balls, 4 balls, whatever, and then you have a break. Because again, that happens in cricket. It gives you time to reflect on what's happening, how you're playing, which is I guess in a way, it's the art of batting in a way, is managing your mind through those moments as well. There's times I definitely haven't got it right as a coach in this space as well. So I remember early on with Canterbury, I thought this was getting closer to the season, and I wanted us to have the scenario. I felt guys were coming to training not in the same mindset that they would be when they come to a game. So I saw a difference between training and playing, where players were very quiet, very nervous coming to a playing day, but quite the opposite at training. They're quite jovial, having a laugh and stuff. So we had a week of, if you're out at training, and you're not getting another bat as well. But the mistake I made was that the pitches weren't good enough. And so I had one top order bat who I think faced 6 balls in 4 innings, but went out. And we left that scenario. I mean, he obviously wasn't very happy. And look, I put my hand up and say it was probably the wrong situation to do that as well now. If the pitches were good, then no problems. But I then reflected also back and thought, well, it actually brought the desired effect that I was looking, that this has to mean something now as well. So I think it's another form of training you can do. I wouldn't be doing it all the time, but it's one where you can make players feel pretty uncomfortable as well. And then I think at times when players are going really well, part of your job is to try and add distractions and try and make it difficult for them as well. So you're trying to overload them as to what might happen in the game. So we're lucky now we have the sidearms, the flickers that we can use. But if players are comfortable, we'll come three yards closer and just ramp up the speed, or put a couple of things on the pitch that are there as a distraction, because not many batsmen like it being like too many distractions on the pitch. So I don't know, we used to use the old clotheslines that you could put down so the ball might seem a wee bit off it. So rather than it being just a really flat wicket, you could do different things that add distraction. But I think that adds to the mental strength of what they're doing and sticking to their plans as well. So I guess there are a couple of examples of things that you might consider doing. But look, I mean, the best player I've seen in this space is Kane Williamson, and it's probably not a surprise. He's got an incredible appetite for batting and loving to bat, but also he's a great problem solver as well. And I think ultimately that's what batting is about, is solving the problems that you have that are right in front of you, whether it's the pitch, what the ball's doing, is it swinging, what's the scoreboard, what do I have to do right now? So I think as much as you can as a coach, you want to encourage the players to solve problems. It's a big spinning wicket. Okay, what's it mean to batting on this wicket versus batting on a flat wicket? How much risk do you have to take? And that's all about, I guess, just managing your mind to be nice and clear when you face the ball.
Fantastic. That's quality. Moving forward now to the time you had coaching New Zealand, a lengthy period of time for sure. What's your fondest memory there?
Oh, well, I hadn't really thought about it too much. I mean, obviously you coach because you want to see improvement in players. And I think there's obviously the winning of tournaments and things like that, and doing better than perhaps what you thought you would. But the most joy I got was seeing people come into the team and succeed and do well. And there's always that nagging doubt, I guess, when people walk in, is, are they ready? Have they got the game? Are they mentally strong enough? And when you do see players come in and achieve that, you see how much they grow inside as well, and their self-belief just goes to another level. So you see players achieve some pretty special things. And in 7 years nearly that I was there, I mean, we obviously had a World Test Championship win, which was incredible to be part of, and at COVID time, so it was very, very different in the world then. We went to a T20 and an ODI World Cup final. Obviously the 2019 one in England. That's still not really sure how I feel about it still, but and we made some T20 World Cups in the final of the Champions Trophy. So they're all very, very special memories. And yeah, you sacrifice things as well. You sacrifice time with the family. You're away for a long, long time on the road, but so are the players. And I guess when you work out as a team what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve, then it's amazing what you can do with a special bunch of guys.
I want to ask now about some of the challenges, I guess, with being a head coach of a national team, right? In terms of, you had to make some tough decisions at times, as a coach, and naturally, following those decisions, your job is to deal with the media queries and questions around that. So I'm really interested in, I guess, the various hats that you wear as a national coach, right? As you talk about, you're in it because you want players to improve. And you're working with those players every day to try and achieve that. Team results are the outcome, I guess, of how successful that is, right? But as you know, there's so many variables involved, and sometimes there are things outside of your control. And then, as I said, you then got to make decisions about those players and selections, and then, dealing with the questions you get from media around why certain players are in, why certain players are out, etc. So I can only imagine must have been incredibly challenging. How did you sort of navigate that, and what was your general philosophy around dealing with the challenging questions that you'd get from media, etc.?
Yep. Well, I guess the first thing is, as a head coach of a national team, generally it's a 24/7 role. Like it's on the whole time. You don't get a lot of time off, and when people think, oh, they're not playing, that's usually the coach's busiest time, because you're either planning trainings or you're in trainings, or as a head coach, you're looking ahead maybe to 2 series times, and who are we selecting then, and what do we need them to do right now to be ready for that. So it's challenging mentally, I think, to have that forward focus all the time when the public, I guess, want to hang you out to dry if you're not getting the result today as well. But I always thought, I guess, as the coach, your job is to try and protect your players as much as you can. So if it was a bad day, I was happy to go and front the media around that and put your hand up at times, say, well, it wasn't our best day, and we'll try and learn from that and get better. And as a general philosophy for me, look, there were tough times at times, and I said earlier, I think your home media are probably your harshest, because they're probably the most opinionated, because they know the most around the team as well. But I always said, if you can look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and know that you gave it your best, well, it doesn't actually really matter what other people are saying. And look, there were times that my head was called for and things like that. But I think at times you try and get a gauge from the group, and we were always pretty good in the New Zealand team at getting around each other, and people knew when others were struggling with things, and it was about a bit like a family, what's going on, how can we help you here, and making sure that we looked after each other as well. And certainly as a head coach, you're no different. You're not immune to that criticism at all, and probably get more of it in a lot of ways than anyone else does. But as I said, if you can look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and say, hey, I've given this my best shot, then I guess that's all you can live with.
And that team culture that you referred to there, where everyone's kind of looking out for each other, was it that which helped you, stay in the role for so long, in terms of it's incredibly demanding, as you said, you're compromising family time ultimately, right, in certain areas. So, how much of an impact does that have in your ability to stay in the job for, what you say, 7 years there?
Yep. Yeah, it definitely helps, and having good staff around you that you can rely on and trust, I think, is really important. And I think in my time as well, probably what helped me hang on for a little bit longer was probably COVID. because we had I think it was a 6 or 7 week lockdown period in New Zealand, where we weren't doing anything. So I remember we were in Sydney playing. We got the call from the government, you got to be home within 24 hours, otherwise we're locking the borders. And so we went home, and no one really knew what was happening there. But to spend that time, I guess, in the middle of my tenure as coach, to just be at home with the family was again, I look back on it and I love that time. It was very different to being away on the road, and to get to reconnect with them, I think was probably what I needed at the time without realizing it. And I sort of reflect back now after the time, and I was still keen to coach the Test team if they wanted to, but New Zealand Cricket wanted to go a different way, and that's fine. That's their prerogative to do that. And sort of think back 3 or 4 months later and think, well, I was actually probably on the verge of burnout a little bit, and without really realizing it as well, because you put on I guess a tough exterior, and right, here we go again. And I think I look back now, and I'm much fresher now from having to do a few different roles as well, working with Otago for a while, and then over here, I guess it's just rejuvenated and I guess refreshed me a wee bit as well. So I still love the idea of helping people be their best, and it's just I'm doing it in a state in India at the moment, not in New Zealand, although I'm still doing some work for New Zealand Cricket, which is good as well.
And so the state of that work that you're doing for New Zealand Cricket, what does that look like over the next wee while?
It's sort of just a part-time role when I'm not over here, working with anyone from, I guess, under 19s up to Blackcaps or White Ferns, and sort of a little bit with the MAs as well, just or the coaches, and helping, I guess, helping them simplify things and get really clear on what they're trying to achieve. So I haven't had a lot to do with it yet because I've been over here a fair bit of the time, but it's still good to I guess be able to give back to New Zealand Cricket as well, because I guess that's where my heart is.
Well said. Look, that's it from me, Steady. I just wanted to say genuinely thank you for your contribution to New Zealand Cricket, because as a fan, it's been incredible to watch over the last probably 10 to 11 years when New Zealand really got our act together on the international scene, right? And we've been incredibly consistent across numerous forms of the game for what is a very long time. And when I grew up, we were a long way from being anywhere near there. So it's been a real pleasure watching. So as I said, your contribution is significant. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, mate. Nice to speak.
I hope you found something useful in the podcast that you can apply to your game. I help cricketers master the mental edge required to build consistent match-winning innings. I'm available on Instagram at Batting Mentality, or you can visit my website at battingmentality.com. I'd appreciate it if you like the podcast on whatever platform you're on, and if you think the discussion will resonate with someone you know, please share it. It helps us to grow the channel and get even bigger names on the pod. Until next time, folks, what one action are you taking today to give yourself the best chance of success in your next innings?